I am a lawyer. I have represented countless clients in both civil and criminal court. I go to trial. I conduct investigations. I have used both private and government investigative services. I have represented people charged with the most minor crimes all the way up to those charged with murder. And now, I want to analyze the 2015 incident that changed Audeze forever. It is time we unraveled what happened in 2015. I believe that incident reshaped Audeze for the worse. To Audeze diehards, this is going to be difficult to accept. For the never Audeze people, you will joyously accept this video and use it as more motivation to hate the company. But that's not the intent. I do not want to divide us. Audeze has done that enough. Rather, I want us to know what happened and how Audeze contributed to its own failures. My last video about Audeze examined the company's substandard treatment of customers who bought headphones on Massdrop. That video showed people were rather interested in Audeze and its behavior. Audeze has a tendency to blame others, the government, audiophiles, rivals, the fake news media. It's always someone else's fault. Well, let's see if we can find the inception of this destructive attitude. On the evening of February 28, 2015, Audeze's warehouse in California was broken into. At least 6 people were involved. Over $250,000 of headphones were stolen. The reaction in the hi-fi community was unanimous. Audiophiles were surprised, saddened, and gave words of support to Audeze. Everyone hoped that the thieves would be caught and prosecuted. This 5-year-old theft has been a reliable crutch for Audeze. They have used this as an excuse to treat customers and partners with ever more restrictive measures. The theft is Audeze's version of the #MeToo, demanding respect and support at all times. Most recently, Audeze and its supporters used the 2015 theft as the excuse to refuse warranty service on headphones sold on Massdrop. This is a reprehensible and probably illegal, spiteful reaction by Audeze. Let's talk about the crime in 2015. Well, there were 2 crimes. One is an actual violation of the law. The other is a crime against common sense. This is the story of how Audeze was burgled. And it's the story of how Audeze interfered with the investigation, lost its co-founder, and has never been the same since. There's an iconic scene from the movie Mission Impossible. It's when Tom Cruise drops down from the ceiling, suspended on some wires. He's a few inches off the ground, and he has to steal something inside a highly secure room. The Audeze heist in 2015 reminded me of that movie. You see, in the early morning hours of February 28, 2015, 6 thieves conspired to break into Audeze's warehouse in California. The thieves wore masks and gloves. They were brazen. They walked directly in front of the camera, which covered the loading area. They cut through the steel door. This cut was low to the ground and just large enough to fit 1 person in at a time. These thieves then crawled through the door and continued to crawl inside the warehouse. They crawled right in front of video cameras. They used boxes to hide their faces, obviously aware that the cameras were present. More than that, they knew that the cameras were capable of recording in low light. The thieves took their time to look through many boxes. They were out for the pricey stuff. These thieves casually worked their craft for 2 hours. Between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., the thieves slowly, carefully examined closed boxes from which to steal. Then, when they were satisfied, they left. The next morning, employees showed up for work and found a hole cut in the door. They found marks on the warehouse floors. They found boxes opened and contents spilled on the ground. They discovered several boxes had gone missing. The clock to find out who did it had started. There was some speculation that the theft was an inside job. There was indeed plenty of evidence to suggest this. Most break-ins are quick. Most break-ins are not random. Yes, every once in a while you will have a drug addict or drunkard who barges through your door, but the vast majority of burglaries occur after some thought. A home or business is selected, it is watched, the burglary is planned to some degree. The execution of burglaries is not particularly sophisticated, and most burglars are in fact caught even after careful planning. But the Audeze burglary was of a different class. It showed sophistication in its planning and execution. The burglars showed brazen comfort in the way that they carried the burglary out. 6 people. Now that's a large group. That's 1 in 6 chance someone will get squeamish. 1 in 6 chance someone will get arrested the day before on a petty charge and then confess to the planned burglary out of fear. 1 in 6 chance someone will get too cocky and say too much. 1 in 6 chance that someone will get pinched after the burglary and confess. 1 in 6 chance of failure. These guys must have been comfortable with each other. They must have known each other from before. You don't pick up burglars like this off the curb at Home Depot. These guys are not your typical drug addicts who break down doors looking for more drugs. These guys were obviously professionals. Planning requires concentration. It requires information. It requires coordination. There were many cameras at the warehouse. Clearly, the burglars knew that. The cameras outside the entrance were visible. But how could these guys be sure nobody was watching the cameras all the time? How could these guys be sure there wasn't a security guard? Maybe the burglars watched the warehouse a couple of nights, but a couple of nights isn't enough to be absolutely certain that there isn't a night watchman around. And if there was a security guard, they must have known his rounds. Companies hire a security agency, one which sends out a few patrol officers every night. Each patrol officer has more than one location to guard, so he drives in his fake police car from one business to another, doing cursory examination of each premises. If there was a security agency working the Audeze warehouse, then the burglars knew when the guard would show up and how long he would stay. The burglars did not bother with any lockpicking. They were confident enough to just cut a man-sized hole in the warehouse door. The warehouse door is made of fairly thin metal. It would not require power tools to cut through, but cutting through it would still make noise. Perhaps the noise outside would be minimal and could be muffled with a heavy blanket draped over the cutting area. But the noise would still be prevalent inside the cavernous warehouse, where sounds tend to resonate quite easily. And especially at night when no one else is inside. There is no other movement, no other noises. The noise of steel being cut would be obvious inside the warehouse. But how could these burglars know the door was not alarmed? How could they be so sure there wasn't a movement sensor right at the door? And when the burglars came in, what information did they have that they wouldn't run into a guard inside the warehouse? When the burglars crawled around hiding their faces from the cameras, how did they know where the cameras were? How did they know to keep low to the ground to not set off the movement alarms? These burglars must have known something about the headphones too, because they didn't grab the first boxes they saw. No, these guys crawled on their bellies from box to box. They were looking for something. But what? To a normal person, one headphone is as good as another, but these burglars knew the difference. They didn't grab any EL8 headphones, not a single one. They went for the big guns, the LCDs. They knew good from better. And the most obvious fact of all showing this might have been an inside job, the time. 2 hours, from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. For 2 hours, these 6 burglars did not feel compelled to run, hide, or hurry up. For 2 hours, they worked slowly, casually, as if they knew they were safe. They must have had some pre-arranged time period. They must have all agreed not to spend more than a few hours inside. They all knew what to look for and how long to look. One fact after another builds a case. One piece of information after another creates a clearer picture. Unless Audeze flung open his warehouse doors to whoever wanted to come and inspect the security at any time, it is safe to conclude the burglary had informed help. It would be reasonable for the cops to start questioning the Audeze staff first. When a crime in the United States is committed, the wheels of justice squeak into motion. Here is what likely happened when Audeze called the police. The police dispatcher notified a patrol officer in the area to head over immediately. That officer arrived within a few hours. He started with a brief statement from whoever was in charge. He started looking at the warehouse door, the boxes, and the parking lot. He asked about the video footage. Meanwhile, he radioed back to dispatch and informed his supervisor. Why? Because this was a theft of over $250,000. This fell into major crimes territory. It potentially required a special team, one comprised of police officers and investigators whose primary job is to investigate commercial burglaries involving significant monetary loss. A detective was eventually assigned to the case. He reviewed witness statements and may have spoken to witnesses again. He made sure photos of the scene were processed. He had a crime technician dust for fingerprints and other identification information. The detective likely asked the Audeze management if they knew who would have an interest in breaking in. The detective likely asked for names of anyone who had been recently fired or had recently resigned. The detective would follow up with those people to figure out if any of them had information about the burglary. The detective would get more information about the security and day-to-day operations at the warehouse. In short, the detective would amass a catalog of facts, some helpful, some not. He would need everything to recreate what happened. The detective would then work backwards. Who is known for committing commercial burglaries? Who has previously been arrested for burglary with someone else? Who would be in the best position to have information about such a big heist? The detective would send out more police officers to talk to some of these criminals. Most wouldn't have any information, some would pretend to have information, and maybe none would be helpful, but it is a process, one which is necessary. The detective would send out a bulletin to local law enforcement agencies. Soon, all law enforcement agencies in California would be aware. If a police officer stopped a car for a traffic violation and had cause to search, and if he found a box of headphones in the trunk, well, arrest on site. As more information came in, that material would be used to obtain a search warrant. Warrants for searching a person's home or business can be issued only after a judge believes there is sufficient evidence to issue such a warrant. Warrants are critical tools in the investigative process, both in terms of obtaining tangible evidence and psychological pressure. Needless to say, this investigative process can take hours, days, weeks, months. It takes time. And it assumes that the victim of the burglary won't screw it all up. Let us assume that the police do their job competently. The victim of the crime must not also interfere with the investigation. Now, look, some crimes are solved quickly, others, however, take time. The burglary at Audeze's warehouse showed sophistication and planning. Whoever was behind it would know better than to start selling the headphones on a street corner. They would also know better than to ship boxes of headphones, since customs would probably have been informed within a few days of the burglary. And these headphones are merchandise for a niche group, audiophiles. It would be impossible for them to offload the stolen headphones to normal people. So, what would these 6 conspirators do? The most likely and reasonable act would be to not act, sit tight. Go do something else, and most of all, stay out of trouble. Every investigation has an expiration date. After a few weeks, that trail gets so cold that it becomes more and more difficult to catch the criminal, but not impossible. You see, time is on both sides, on the side of the criminal and on the side of law enforcement. Of course, getting clues early always helps cops and hurts criminals, but waiting is a double-edged sword. The longer a criminal sits with the stolen items, the longer he'll get desperate. After all, he just went through all that trouble, put his neck on the line to get $250,000 of stuff he has to get off his hands. He's gotta make the money. But this was a job with 6 criminals, and there was 1 in 6 chance someone would get more and more agitated. And all it would take is one of them to grab a box of headphones and try to sell it online. Of course, cops have investigators waiting online to check for stolen goods, especially for these amounts. And the hi-fi community already knew about the heist and would be looking out for suspicious sales. The burglars couldn't just use eBay or Amazon. These legitimate sales sources hold the money for weeks, and you need a bank account. That's too much waiting and too much personal information. So, the thieves have to sell the goods in forums and Craigslist, and that's not particularly difficult for law enforcement to monitor. Consequently, the longer the thieves wait, the more likely the cops will have to move on to other investigations. But the longer they wait, the higher the chance that one of the 6 will try to sell the headphones too early or get caught on a stupid petty charge and end up confessing. It turns into a waiting game. The victim just has to be patient in such an investigation. I know it can be frustrating, but the last thing that the victim should do is incentivize the criminals. Criminals who are getting impatient start to think that the coast is clear and they should just sell the stolen goods. But when a victim starts interfering, starts telling the whole world that they're taking matters into their own hands, putting out a reward for any information, telling the whole community what to look for, posting information about the stolen items, that's enough reason for the criminals to stay low. Where one of the 6 criminals might have been thinking it's safe to sell the stuff, that person will now realize they were wrong, and they'll just agree to wait longer. So, the game is called patience. Wait and watch, and don't interfere. The level of stupidity at Audeze is simply astounding. Audeze was able to insult law enforcement and very likely warn off the criminals all at the same time. The burglary occurred in late February 2015. As I explained previously, investigations of this type involving some sophistication require time to solve. But Audeze started interfering within days of the burglary. On March 1st, 2015, just a few days after the burglary, Audeze posted comments on hifi forums summarizing what happened. They stated they were going to offer a reward and asked the community to report any sales of headphones directly to Audeze. They said they would post the serial numbers of the stolen headphones. At first sight, this might sound like a good step, but it isn't. Not if you're trying to catch the criminals. If you were dealing with some random criminal who stole 1 or 2 headphones from your warehouse, that would be one thing. But Audeze was dealing with people who clearly knew what they were doing. These people weren't the average smash and grab thieves. They were aware of the hi-fi community. Consequently, it would be natural for them to go to forums, especially soon after the burglaries, to see what was happening. And by posting a reward, Audeze incentivized the criminals to be that much more mindful to whom they approached with the stolen goods. Furthermore, by posting the serial numbers, Audeze told the criminals they needed to at least wait longer before selling the goods. Obtaining clean serial numbers for these headphones would be possible. Over the course of weeks and months, the thieves would get serial numbers of headphones that were being sold legitimately on eBay and Amazon. These thieves could pose as potential buyers and ask sellers for confirmation of serial numbers. They could then make new serial number prints for the headphones, numbers based on the legitimate ones sellers provided out of good faith. That's a lot of work and something the thieves would try to avoid, but when given no other options, they'd resort to this. Then, about 30 days after the burglary, Audeze gave a statement to the media. They said they had no faith in the police department. Sankar Diagsmudram, the co-founder of Audeze, said he doubted the police department saw Audeze's theft as top priority. Sankar said Audeze had hired Martin Investigative Services to help catch the thieves and locate the looted merchandise. I chuckled when I read this. Sankar couldn't help himself. He managed to denigrate the public servants who investigate crimes for a living, who have immense resources available to them. He simply didn't get it. $250,000 in theft is a big deal. We're not talking about someone's stolen bicycle. It's not vandalism of someone's car. It's breaking into a business, selectively stealing items, and brazenly doing it for 2 hours. It involves a large amount of goods. The brazenness of the theft and the total value of the lost items automatically place the burglary in a special class. The burglary would have been categorized as a major crimes case, assigned to a detective and a special prosecutor to oversee the investigation. Perhaps all of this was not done within the first few days, but it would have been done nonetheless. That's the process. It is also completely natural for police not to tell the victim precisely what is going on, especially when the heist looks like it was an inside job. The police have no reason to trust anyone at the business, and it is their policy not to share information about an open investigation. But to someone like Sankar, the lack of detailed information and immediate results was because the police couldn't handle the investigation. Note to Audeze: it's never a good idea to publicly ridicule and denigrate the police department that you've asked to help you. In the United States, you can insult a police officer, and they have to take it. They cannot arrest you for comments that hurt their egos. So, although Sankar's comments would not have been a reason to stop the investigation, they may have turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sankar is correct in one sense. Police departments have a lot of cases to investigate, and they have to prioritize. The theft of someone's bicycle is pretty low on that list. The theft of someone's merchandise in the amount of $250,000, however, is pretty high, especially since there had been other recent burglaries of hi-fi establishments. When Sankar made that press release insulting the police, he signaled he thought the police had given up. Well, they likely had not given up, but they may have been incentivized to put Audeze's burglary investigation a little lower on the importance scale. This burglary was bigger than Audeze. It involved a ripoff in the entire hi-fi community. These people knew what to take, what was going to bring in the money. These burglars were out to scam anyone they could. The burglars' sheer tenacity would have been evident to the police. The limited avenues to make money from that theft would also have been obvious to the police. If the police believed that the stolen goods were relocated somewhere else in the United States or exported to another country, well, the police had a method of dealing with that too. If the police thought that the headphones had been taken to a different part of California or to another state, they could ask and would get coordination and cooperation from other law enforcement agencies. If, for example, it appeared that the headphones had been moved to a house in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Police Department could obtain a search warrant. And if the headphones had been transported out of the country, that would fall into FBI territory. Law enforcement agencies in other countries would have been informed. But the physical location of the goods is not that important. Getting a lead to question one of the 6 burglars is, in fact, the goal. And so, concentrating on locating a suspect, any one of the 6, would be the priority. Find a co-conspirator and he will lead you to the rest. But when Audeze hired their private investigators, they did something quite stupid. Audeze signaled to the burglars that they needed to wait just a little bit longer. There is a misunderstanding of private investigators. These guys aren't capable of doing anything better than actual law enforcement. In fact, they're less able to do things. Private investigators cannot get search warrants. They cannot arrest people. They don't have contacts in the criminal underworld. Private investigators have no authority. They cannot drive around in marked police cars. In most jurisdictions, do not have any sort of badge, can rarely carry firearms, and have no menace to them at all. Private investigators will probably jump into a dumpster to look for scraps of paper. They will spend countless hours sitting in a parking lot waiting for something to happen. Of course, each passing hour is another billable hour. I'm not saying that private investigators are all bad. They're not. Some of them are former police officers. I've worked with some very good investigators who used to be police officers. But hiring a private investigator during an open investigation of a crime is a stupid thing to do. Private investigators will have to tread very carefully around witnesses. They cannot intimidate a witness because doing that is a criminal offense in itself. Private investigators have to get permission from police to talk to some people involved in the case. Private investigators have no more information to go off than the police do and have to start all over again because the police do not share their investigation resources. That means looking at material that is old, trying to talk to people that have already provided statements, and generally being a nuisance to everyone. Martin Investigative Services, the private dicks Audeze hired, have a website. I have never had any personal experience with these guys, but I can draw some general inferences through their website. Martin advertises itself as a preeminent investigative service. Well, maybe that's the case, but I roll my eyes whenever I see legal services marketed like Martin markets theirs. Let's just say that Martin's website reminds me of a used car salesman. Enough said. Now, you'd think that Martin would want to advertise the Audeze heist. I mean, Martin has other testimonials on its website, so why not the successful Audeze investigation? I mean, Martin looks expensive. Audeze probably gave them plenty of money to solve the crime. How would Martin help? They would likely talk to the employees at the warehouse. Audeze would facilitate that. Martin might approach former employees for information, but without official authority could not compel these people to talk. Martin might search online forums for a few weeks. They might spend a few hours combing through eBay and US Audio Mart listings. They might post fake forum requests to buy Audeze headphones. But most importantly, they would signal to the burglars what to do. By telling everyone that the cops had no leads, Sankar telegraphed the thieves were almost really in the clear. All the thieves had to do was wait just a little bit longer. By hiring Martin, Sankar told the thieves how their heist had succeeded, and how else the thieves could cover their tracks. And if there was an inside man, all he would have to do is keep his mouth shut. He could refuse to talk to Martin, or he could just repeat the same story he had already told the cops. Sure, Martin probably had a lot more time to devote to Audeze's case than the real police, but Martin had no resources to make that time meaningful. I searched through Martin's website for any mention of the Audeze investigation, and there was nothing. Further research online shows that there is no information about what Martin did to solve the burglary. You see, a lengthy online search about the burglary shows it was never solved. Audeze never posted that the criminals were caught or merchandise recovered. Hi-Fi forums don't mention anyone having been arrested in connection to the crime. There's no press release by the police stating they had solved the crime. There was nothing at all to indicate that the mystery had been demystified. There is no way to tell if Audeze's meddling helped the criminals. It's possible. And it's also possible the criminals had this whole thing so well planned that they had all the advantage. But I can say that Audeze did not help the situation. Hiring Martin Investigative Services might have been fine if done properly. Audeze could have hired these guys to sit and watch the forums, eBay, and other websites, and Audeze should have kept that secret. All it would have taken is some more time and patience. The burglars would have eventually tried to sell the headphones online. Martin might have been able to buy one and done the necessary investigation to figure out where the headphones were being shipped from. Martin could have uncovered some information and handed it over to the police, which would then have all the official muscle to get warrants, make arrests, and submit reports for prosecution. And Martin could have helped the police in secret. But when Audeze told everyone on the internet that they had hired the private investigators, that the police had not provided further information since the burglary, well, Audeze completely closed off the viable avenue to catch the thieves. It's clear that Audeze had insurance. Sankar said their insurance company would compensate them. And I hope Audeze learned a lesson about having competent security at a warehouse that holds hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise. But the burglary had long-term consequences and none good for the audiophile community as a whole. In July 2015, the co-founder of Audeze, Alex Rosson, decided to resign. He left the company to Sankar. There was no explanation why Alex was leaving. When Alex left, there were separate press releases by Sankar and Alex. Sankar provided a vague acknowledgement of Alex's contributions. Sankar turned his comments to, well, himself, and promised better things to come in Audeze's future. Perhaps Sankar provided more worthy statements regarding Alex, but I could not find them in print. It was rather odd. Alex and Sankar had created Audeze from the ground up together, and Alex's leaving was a major change, but Sankar's statement can only be seen as cold and detached. Alex provided his own notice of resignation on LinkedIn. He did not explain why he left. He merely thanked everyone at Audeze and the hi-fi community for their support and dedication. However, in 2019, Alex was interviewed by the Master Switch. They asked him about his departure from Audeze. He said he left after signing a partnership with Apple. This was, I assume, for the EL8 headphones, specifically with lightning cables and distribution through the Apple Store. Alex said he had set up a deal between Audeze and Warner Music Group. And then Alex left. No explanation why. Alex recounted all the things he had done since leaving Audeze, things that are quite impressive. I suggest you read the Master Switch article since summarizing Alex's achievements would be too lengthy here. It is safe to say that Alex is passionate about creating excellent gear, not affordable gear, but those which sound exceptional. So, when he left Audeze, he handed the reins to Sankar. I know very little about Sankar. There is not a whole lot of information about him. He gave a few interviews in the last several years, but none provide factual information relevant to determine his expertise. When Alex was at Audeze, it is apparent he had a guiding hand in the development of new products. But since his departure in 2015, Audeze's attitude toward customers and products has shifted. With Alex at the wheel, Audeze provided the LCD2 and LCD3. We had the EL8 and the cipher cable. He was in charge when the excellent Deckard DAC amp was created, and I'm sure he had plenty of input on other ideas. But what has Audeze done since 2015? It discontinued the Deckard, an amplifier that paired perfectly with the Audeze headphones. Audeze discontinued the cipher cable, a technology that could have been further researched and licensed to provide better quality sound from mobile devices. And Audeze has had mixed results with product releases. They released the LCD4 and 4Z, both which had growing pains with failing drivers. They released the Reveal software, which is of limited benefit and more a distraction from the art of making headphones. In 2018, Audeze collaborated with Massdrop to create the LCD2 Classic, and when Audeze realized they might have a headphone people would actually buy, they took the collaboration and sold it as their own, completely cutting out Massdrop. Audeze sold a painfully awful Mobius, jam-packed with gimmicks, and just last year, Audeze released the LCD1, an average headphone that was promised as something quite different. Audeze's most recent action was to refuse warranty on headphones sold through Massdrop, all because of spite. It is evident that Audeze has talented engineers. No, not all ideas get the full attention they deserve, and true, some bad ideas get star treatment, like the Mobius. Success is determined in the grand scale. Where did arguably the best of Audeze originate? While Alex Rosson was around, Audeze made some unique products. Alex helped open Audeze to a larger clientele. He helped develop headphones that the average person could appreciate. And with Massdrop's help, Audeze realized that the LCD2 Classic was something customers were craving. Through the years, Audeze has become more a brand name rather than a brand change. In its early years, Audeze reinvented the hi-fi game. They took risks and stuck with the planar magnetic design because they fervently believed it could provide different sound quality than dynamic drivers. They pushed boundaries. But since 2015, Audeze has been more about brand image than creating unique, truly unique products. Partnering with influential YouTubers and reviewers is not revolutionary. It is instead evolutionary. Audeze evolved from a company focused on meaningful acoustic designs to a company focused on meaningless advertisement. A comparison to Beats, I think, is appropriate. Beats is more than a headphone brand, it's a lifestyle brand. Their headphones are of questionable quality, but the partnerships Beats has drives that brand to profit. What is Beats? It's the headphones athletes and rap stars wear. In pre-game warm-ups, you can see basketball stars donning their brightly colored Beats headphones. In tabloids, you see influential people wearing Beats around their necks as they walk down New York streets. The headphones match the outfits. This keeps the brand continually in the mind of the real target, those who take lifestyle cues from pop stars, athletes, and YouTube junkies. And what have we seen with Audeze? Audeze has always had a dedicated audiophile community. Not the influential people, mind you, but people who were passionate about better sound quality. But in the last 5 years, things started to change. It wasn't just the people who actually bought and listened to the headphones. It became less and less about them. Instead, more attention was given to garnering support from the likes of Bob Katz, YouTube stars, and a handful of music producers. These people were hardly different from the group Beats partnered with to promote their own brand. Review websites and social media stars became the new darlings for Audeze. Audeze likely realized something important. If they want to sell more, they have to make people want to buy more. How are brands like Beats able to compel its fan base that they need to buy the newest version of their headphones? Marketing, and lots of it. Audeze, with Sankar's guidance, put its effort into courting organizations like Echo Fox. Echo Fox was an esports events coordinator. It put on competitions for esports and sponsored players and yada yada yada. In early 2019, Audeze announced they would partner with Echo Fox. Why? Because the Mobius was just released, and Audeze needed to hit their target market. With Echo Fox, Audeze had a reliable advertiser. Echo Fox could provide Mobius headphones to competitors, the equivalent of Beats handing out headphones to basketball players to wear during warm-ups. But the Echo Fox relationship was poorly researched. You see, Echo Fox was disbanded in November of 2019, just months after the relationship with Audeze began. This company was plagued with lawsuits and internal strife, troubling activities that predated Audeze's partnership. Of course, that partnership went nowhere. But that did not deter Audeze. They also partnered with Embody, a software company that excels at creating fake spatial sound software. Audeze wanted Embody to help with the reveal software to add the nonsense gimmicks. With this Embody algorithm, users could take a photo of their ear, upload that photo to some server, and have a sound profile that matched their style. Hocus pocus mumbo jumbo. But most importantly for Audeze, the Embody partnership opened the way to entice customers to buy Audeze's reveal software. Headphones that Audeze previously, years ago, marketed and sold as perfectly tuned now were subject to further tuning based on software manipulation. And it is a feature that you had to pay more for. Sankar reached out to influential hi-fi reviewers as well. He gave interviews heaping praises on himself and his company when he spoke to Inner Fidelity, Steve Guttenberg, The Verge, just to name a few. And of course, the marketing continues to pay dividends to Audeze. The marketing for the Mobius is shockingly misleading. I have talked at length about that headphone in its review video, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the headphone is such a colossal waste of time that even the marketing material is incapable of making the headphone's capabilities appear noteworthy. Nevertheless, YouTube gamers, CNET, IGN, and other pointless reviewers gave the headphones gushing reviews. Of course, none of these outlets conducted a meaningful examination of the Mobius. Then there's the LCD-1. It's not a demon child like the Mobius, but it's not what Audeze is peddling. And peddle the headphones Audeze has. They entered into a very special collaboration with Metal 571 to push the headphones. They had a few producers give vague commendations to the headphones and used those comments as part of the marketing. Actual users of the headphones are not so convinced about the LCD-1. Audeze's attention has been some other place than on its customers. The recent mass drop debacle is just one example, but there are two others worthy of consideration. In late 2019 and early 2020, there were Reddit discussions of people complaining that Audeze headphones were dying from normal, careful use. It turned out that pressing the headphone ear cups onto your ears caused air pressure that offset the drivers. This resulted in weird distorted sounds or even full driver failure. The discussion soon turned to justified anger as users complained Audeze never provided a warning about this issue. And it's true, Audeze never did. Metal 571 chimed in and defended the company. He said that the air pressure issue is normal with every headphone, but most users aren't aware of it. He suggested that maybe Audeze should just add a disclaimer. In other words, don't blame Audeze for you not knowing about this issue. Of course, in all the Audeze headphone reviews Metal uploaded, he did not warn people about the issue either. This was another play with Audeze fans. People who spent a good chunk of their savings on Audeze flagship headphones were suddenly being treated as fools. But of course, air pressure can damage the drivers. It's too bad most people don't know this. Maybe Audeze should provide warnings to the dimwits. That was the interpretation. This incident left Audeze customers upset. But before the mass drop debacle, in 2018, there was another mass drop Audeze debacle. It involved the LCD-2 Classic. This information appeared suddenly in a mass drop comments post. Will Bright at Mass Drop spoke of Audeze's decision to steal the LCD-2 Classic collaborative design. It turned out that the LCD-2 Classic was a collaboration with Mass Drop. Mass Drop had provided specific designs to go along with their own branded amplifiers. They wanted specific tuning of the LCD-2, tuning that would favor the signature Mass Drop wanted to provide its customers. At some point during the collaboration, Audeze decided it didn't need Mass Drop. It took the designs, the specifications, the ideas from Mass Drop and released the LCD-2 Classic as its own creation. I am certain that Sankar had a hand in this. He is, after all, the CEO. Nowhere in Audeze's marketing for the LCD2 Classic did they mention Massdrop helping with the design. Not once did Audeze suggest they didn't come up with the entire headphone themselves. Will Bright at Massdrop commented, quote, "Yeah, it's one of the risks of our process. The only recourse is legal action, and overall, I'd prefer to focus on making the best products for our community, even if that means making some of the best products for other brands accidentally." Gotta say though, they could have changed the pattern of perforations on the headband. We designed it to match our amp DAC cases, but I didn't see anybody pick up on that, so shrug. Before we go any further, I want to address a counterpoint that some might submit. Some might claim I disregarded Audeze and Metal 571's concerns regarding the recent Audeze headphone sales on Massdrop. In my last video, I said Audeze and Metal had no evidence to suggest the headphones Massdrop got were fakes or stolen, and Audeze and Metal could not be trusted in their claims. How then can I accept Will Bright's comments as true about what happened in 2018 with the LCD2 Classic? Well, there are two reasons. First, when Audeze fans accept anything that the company and its collaborators say, then those fans surrender the moral high ground. When you blindly accept anything that supports your worldview, you forfeit the right to tell me how to judge your conduct. Second, Audeze and Metal factually had no information to support their accusations regarding Massdrop. None whatsoever. But Will Bright had first-hand knowledge of the Massdrop Audeze collaboration regarding the LCD2 Classic. First-hand information will always be given substantial more weight than pointless fear-mongering distractions. Consequently, I have no qualms treating Will's statements as potentially true. Assuming for the sake of argument that Will is telling the truth, I find Audeze's conduct immensely annoying and their continual whining about theft disingenuous. Audeze and its fanboys have repeatedly labeled Monolith as crooks and thieves who stole the Audeze headphone specifications. These people bitch and complain about the 2015 burglary, a burglary that was both preventable and could very well have resulted in a successful arrest and prosecution, but for Audeze's unmitigated stupidity. But Audeze's incessant griping is a mirror into the company's psyche. A company so ready to terminate a good-faith contractual partnership is a company that should be approached with purposeful restraint. Audeze's desire to partner with unscrupulous companies like Echo Fox and gimmick peddlers like Embody show a disturbing lack of care. Audeze's blatant disregard for their own customers is disappointing and frustrating. And while Audeze has been busy canceling promising products, releasing lackluster ones as replacements, partnering with questionable companies, ripping off meaningful allies, lying to customers, and providing frustrating customer service, what has the former boss, Alex Rosson, been up to? Well, he helped make Alex Cavalli's Carbon amplifier. He partnered with the American-made brand Shinola, created their manufacturing facility, and made various audio gear for them. He then bought that manufacturing facility from Shinola and started his own hi-fi audio company. Any one of these accomplishments would be difficult to achieve. Imagine where Audeze would be today had their upper management this type of drive and passion. But sadly, Audeze clearly does not have those characteristics anymore. Look, I'm not saying that all of Audeze's products are bad. They're not. Audeze had its successes and failures like any other company. I am a fan of their LCD headphones. I think that they had potential in the EL8 and Sine. I think their Cypher cable was potentially groundbreaking material. I think their Deckard amp DAC was worthy of refinement and continued sale. And despite my misgivings about the LCD1, it is still a headphone worth considering if you know what you're actually getting. But this is not just about buying gear. It's about the experience. It's about the business you do and with whom you do it. It's about the lies and unethical behavior. And when you have all the facts that I mentioned in this video, you can start putting the picture together. No company deserves unmitigated support, and that includes Audeze. I do agree with one thing though. Audeze is a victim of its own hubris and self-importance.